Namaskar and howdy. I am not driving, oh no, but I'm overdue for a couple videos actually, and I've had these things on my mind, so I just want to have a little chat with y'all again today. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is entitlement. I've touched on that before, but especially entitlement within relationships. I'll start off by saying none of us are entitled to anything other than to do the best that we can with the time that we've got, right? No one's entitled to this kind of life, that kind of life, these kinds of riches or abundances. And I get it. It seems very unfair when you see all these other people like having good times or having amazing relationships or hangouts with certain people, or they have nice cars and nice houses and they go on all these nice trips and etc., etc. It can seem really unfair, especially if you've worked so hard for those things, or even just a sliver, a little sliver slice of that kind of heaven here on earth. But second thing, that doesn't mean even the people that do have that they're good people, that they've earned it, that everything's okay underneath that facade, and that they don't have some unfortunate times just right around the corner, this life or the next life. So we don't know, and we don't know always the reason why we're in certain positions in life, but we're just not entitled to anything. And I was thinking about this because I think a lot of people will agree, oh yeah, you do have to work for certain things, to, like, I think most of you out there will agree, especially if you're like middle-aged and older, or have had injuries, or health problems, struggled with obesity, etc., that when you want to get in really good shape, you gotta bust your butt for it. You gotta work for it. But that's part of the draw. Like, seeing the transformation, but then you have your reward system going off and endorphins. You're feeling really good when you do it, and afterwards, it's often like very uplifting, mentally and physically. So the process of that is it's a fun, uplifting process. So a lot of you out there will agree, yeah, of course, you got to work for it. And you'll probably agree, with some other areas of life where you may have to struggle. You have to input time, energy, emotion, blood, sweat, tears, etc., etc. Like, you'll agree with some things where you have to do that, and even sacrifice, and it may be very hard, very difficult, right? But a lot of you out there will also at the same time disagree that very close, solid, enriching relationships or interpersonal connections, they shouldn't be work. It shouldn't be this hard. And I'm sorry to burst that bubble, but that is not true. A lot of you even have heard, good things come to those who wait, or, just putting in that hard work and being rewarded. It's the same thing with relationships of all sorts. All right. There's always something that you have to put in the work and the time. And I think Dr. Thomas Sowell has a saying that there are no solutions, just trade-offs. I believe he said that. And that is 100% true. And with everything, anything. There's only trade-offs. There has to be an input of something, like I just said. And relationships are far from the exception. Far from it. Let me posit this question. How many of you out there think, oh, I have my shit together, I'm good, like I'm golden? If you without hesitation say yes, guarantee you're running from something. You're in denial. And there's a whole host of things or people or both in your life that are keeping that status quo, that are holding up that facade of stability. It isn't you, it's those things and those people that are doing it or propping you up to make you think. You're under that illusion to think that you got this, despite whether or not you have X, Y, and Z things in your life or people in your life. I've seen this time and time again, both personally and professionally. You start to remove those things, or some areas disintegrate, people leave or pass on or whatever, you lose a job. I see a lot of you disintegrate. And the more things that you take away, you realize I wasn't holding myself up. These other things were holding me up. And I've been there. So I'm not trying to say I'm better than you, I'm holier than thou. Nope. I've been there, so I know. And I'm at this point now where I still have definitely things that I'm attached to, or things that I look to for support and guidance and holding, picking me back up, for sure. But with the removal and disintegration, the just complete nuclear decimation of some relationships or things in my life, it has taught me, like, oh wow, like I definitely I struggled to accept and let go with a lot of those things and people. So I know that, like, a lot of the self-dependence and healthy detachment wasn't in place. Like, it wasn't a huge cornerstone of my foundation. So I'm not trying to say I'm better than you. I got this, you don't. No. I think most of us don't. And a lot of people will say, well, I deserve X, Y, Z. I'm entitled to that delusional, denial that it may be just like, maybe that's by happenstance, maybe it's just coincidence, or maybe, you performed some kind of karma in the past and that's part of it, but that doesn't mean that you are entitled to sustain it for your whole life and pass that on to your kids and grandkids. No. And to think that, to believe that, it's not only delusional, but it's dangerous for you and for everybody involved. So, sorry, I'm back in an area where I just have allergies. I'm constantly clearing my throat here. Apologies. But with the relationships and thinking, oh, it should just be easy. Yeah, if you want to keep coasting by in life, and having a good time, right? Then, you ought to work really hard to sustain that. And therein lies, like, I've just spelled it out. Like, you still have to work in some way in other areas in life to have easy, fun times with other people. And I see this with parents and kids. A lot of them, the trade-off is, well, I just won't be much of a disciplinarian with them. I won't have rigid boundaries and expectations and structure. Or I'll give them gifts without them really having to work hard for it and, like, earn the ownership of that abundance, to be a recipient and owner of that abundance. And to just be their friend, their buddy. So blurring, and pretty much with a lot of people, just getting rid of the parent-child role, the boundaries of those roles, the parameter of the relationship, right? And what the roles are and what it looks like, how you guys both perceive and behave with each other. Like, you throw that out the window. So there's always a trade-off. So even when you have adult relationships, most common are romantic ones or friendships, right? But the romantic ones are messier, even if it's not emotionally romantic, but more sexual and physical in nature. There's always some kind of trade-off, right? You're still going to have to give up something or put in the work to attain those kinds of relationships. And then I'm just going to say it, if you're just looking for fun times, easy times, whatnot, then, I mean, hey, you're all consenting adults. I will always fight for your right to, as long as it's not hurting or disrespecting, the constitutional rights of others or hurting people physically, emotionally, etc., then y'all do what you want to do. But that is pretty shallow. It is very, and I mean that like surface level, just, I'm going to, reward that part of my brain and my body just because it feels good, because it's fun, because it's easy. That doesn't mean that it's enriching, though, and it often creates, I've said this in a previous video, even if it doesn't seem like an apparent outcome that is very, like, unhealthy or dangerous, it creates the potential for that, and that is like residue. It just stays with you, and you just increase that chance the more you do it. And that's just with anything. And there's positive residue and negative, and this one is not so positive. Excuse me. So a lot of you, even when you want a serious relationship, you say, well, it shouldn't be a struggle. Well, I'm going to burst your bubble here. Life ain't easy. And when people make it look like it's easy, or, it shouldn't be such a struggle, like, those people are in immense delusional denial. And those are the people that, I'm just going to say it, they have very little resiliency. They're pretty weak when it comes to confronting very difficult, hard things in their life. And so they'll do all that they can to prevent having to confront the ugly skeletons in the closet. And that's like, again, filling their life up often, right? It could be like flings, one night stands, or just very short term, fun dating, serial dating. It could be nice cars, nice houses, fun trips, luxurious items, etc., etc. So, that's a lot of people will do that as a distraction, but as also a means to uphold this false wall that keeps them safe. Relationships are hard. And when I ask that question, how many of you think that you got your shit together and that those things don't affect you, right? You're pretty stable and successful, and like, that ain't gonna change soon. If you really think about it, you know what I'm getting at. Like, we are constantly having to work on ourselves, even when we're in denial. Like, we have all these background processes in our psyche, and even our bodies and our spiritual bodies, that are trying to do the work. Like, that is serving some purpose even when we're in denial and avoiding. But that's a separate topic. So it's hard enough to work on ourselves. Let's all admit that, right? And if you think it's really easy, like, either you're an enlightened being like a rishi or something, or a saint. Even the saints had to work on things, and rishis as well, but okay. Or you're in denial. And I really do wish you the best to wake up and realize, oh man, I've been avoiding stuff. I've been that was some hubris there, some arrogance. So if it's hard enough to work on ourselves and get ourselves to a fine-tuned operating machine, when you add, and to keep it, right, to maintain that, it's really hard. What do you think is going to happen when you just start adding more relationships to your life? And I'm not talking just about romantic ones. Those are some of the messiest, though. Those create some of the biggest messes and entanglements outside of being like a parent and having a child. But that's also different. But that is a very weighty thread to have connecting you two. But when you start really going down that line of I'm going to get deeply emotionally, psychologically, physically involved with this person. I'm not saying, abstain, become a monk, renounce sex and enjoyment of all kinds. I'm not saying that, because we're human, and those relationships can teach us things, but we have to be ready, and we have to be in a good space, head, heart, body, spirit alignment when we start doing those things. And most people are not. Again, they'll fool themselves into thinking they are, but they're not. And once we start, again, going down that thread or forming that thread and the karmic ties with other people like that, it gets very messy. So again, I'm not saying abstain, right? But if you are going to do that, right, I just hope for all of us, me included, that both individuals are in a good space to do that. And then you really have to acknowledge you're going to have to work on so many different aspects of your relationship. Because on top of improving yourself and then maintaining that, and the other person doing that at the same time, you're now going to have to work on, oiling the new machine and like lubricate. Maybe that's not the best word, but like keeping that thread and the connections like stable and healthy. Like you're going to have to work on that. And a lot of that is dependent if you do not, let your guard down and let your boundaries be disrespected. And a lot of that, almost all of it is on you for that. And the other person as well. They have to do that for themselves. If you both can do that, right? Acknowledge, you have these boundaries, I have these boundaries, but we still care about each other. We still want to pursue this relationship, whatever kind it is, even if it's more casual, okay? So I'm not saying you can't do those casual relationships either, but very few people are actually in a space where they can successfully pull that off. And pull it off with the other parties in the same place. So whatever the relationship, the kind of relationship you're pursuing, you both have to acknowledge, we have these boundaries, expectations. We both need to respect our own and then respect each other's boundaries and expectations. And if we don't want to do that anymore, then we have to, go our separate ways. And if you're pursuing that relationship, then healthy communication, mutual respect, acknowledgement, that loyalty. And I've made videos about that in the past. But loyalty is going to be big, especially if it's, any kind of relationship. But especially the deeply romantic ones, especially exclusive, committed ones. That loyalty is going to be huge. So Anyways, I think that people just need to acknowledge that relationships, we have to work at everything else. There's no solutions, just trade-offs. And everything is going to be work, especially in life when life throws you curveballs. And there's so many different kinds out there. It throws a wrench in the works. Like, you're going to have to learn how to pivot, to adapt. And with all the relationships that you have in your life of all sorts, you're going to have to learn how to pivot and adapt, and that's going to change certain dynamics or aspects of those relationships. You'll have to acknowledge that. It's just inescapable. So if you can do that, like I said, you're an adult, consenting adults, you do you, right? But I'm saying this again because I genuinely care about other people. Me pointing this out and talking with passion about it doesn't mean that I'm some toxic, person trying to say I know better because I am better than you. No, far from it. I acknowledge I have a lot to work on. Trust me, a lot of this, feeling that I was entitled to certain relationships or there were expectations and boundaries in the past that I had, but I let my boundaries be disrespected. And I even disrespected them myself because I wanted something out of this relationship. And that made things way worse. But then also I had these expectations. To have the expectation, is one thing. But like, I want and I expect this to happen out of this person, but to actually feel like you are entitled to getting that result is different. So an expectation is more something that is, perceived, right? More in here and in here, like I want and I really think I should get it. But that doesn't mean that you're entitled to get it. You're entitled to that result. Okay. And that took me a long time to realize, like, no, like I can have these boundaries and expectations, but if the person does not willingly want to do that and come through, which is to probably more times than not to be expected, then okay, and I need to evaluate, do I really want to disrespect my boundaries and maybe significantly lower my expectations out of this person and the relationship? And more like, again, unless they're willing to and really wanting to, it's probably a sign that you're just not compatible. So, and that's the next video that I'm going to touch on, this compatibility over chemistry thing. But anyways, I'm going to leave it here. Wish you all the best on your journeys. I genuinely do. All right. Stay safe out there, and see you next time.